welcome to Career Day. We are very fortunate to have, well, we will have 5 eventually. She's on her way. Mr. Ferguson's meeting her in the parking lot. But we're very fortunate to have these 5 wonderful people visiting us today and sharing a bit of their life journey, which started here, woo, at Williams. So the first lady I'd like to talk about is Melissa Tantaquidgen Zobel, class of 78. Also, aunt of a couple of 3 girls in here, and the mother of Madeline and David Sayed. Melissa Tantaquidgen Zobel is a Mohegan author, historian, and storyteller, and serves as both the medicine woman and tribal historian for the Mohegan tribe. In addition, she is executive director of the tribe's Cultural and Community Program Department. Also a prolific writer, Zobel has published many books, including the historical biography Medicine Trail, The Life and Lessons of Gladys Tantaquidgen, and the futuristic novel Oracles. After receiving her BS/FS in History and Diplomacy from Georgetown University, where she was both a member of the Phi Alpha Theta History Honor Society and recipient of the Lorenz Sosi Native American Scholarship, Zobel earned an MA in History from the University of Connecticut. Melissa has served as a storyteller of the Mohegan tribe and traveled all throughout New England. She has held a number of prestigious tribal positions and elected posts, including the Mohegan Federal Recognition Coordinator from 1922 to 1994, and the first Native American gubernatorial appointee to the Connecticut Historical Commission in 1994. Ms. Zobel.
Good morning, everyone. What grades do we have here right now?
6 to 12.
6 to 12. Okay, so can I have a shout out to my 3 nieces? Cassie, Gabby, and Brianna. I want to talk this morning about becoming a writer. And I'd like to start with a show of hands from anyone who's ever thought, just once, that they might become a writer. Could you raise your hands? Okay. I know there are more than that, but that's very good. Excellent. So whether you raised your hands or not, I want you to know that by virtue of the fact that you are students at the Williams School, you are all more than capable of becoming writers and good writers. I know this because my mother went to Williams, and I attended Williams, my 3 children attended Williams, my nieces attended Williams, and I know your English department. And should you wonder whether or not your English department is good enough to prepare you to become a professional writer, let me tell you a very short story. When I graduated from Williams, my parents wanted me to do something practical. So I went to Georgetown University, where I attended the School of Foreign Service. And the School of Foreign Service prepares you for government service, particularly studying and working abroad as a diplomat. But I started college in 1978. And something very drastic happened in 1979. In 1979, 52 American diplomats and citizens were held hostage in an embassy in Iran for 444 days. So I thought that maybe becoming a diplomat wasn't such a good idea. So my other plan was to become a writer. But the program that I attended at Georgetown didn't have any creative writing classes. So I took no creative writing classes in college. And when I was at Williams, I'd liked history. I'd won the history prize. So I went on to graduate school in history, and I wrote historical biographies. But I really wanted to become a novelist. So what did I do? Did I go back to school? Did I take classes? How did I become a novelist? I just started writing. So what was the education that I had to prepare me to become a novelist? It was my high school education at Williams. And that was all. That is all you need to start writing books. Anybody started a book already? Any hands? Nobody wants to admit it. Okay, a couple. All right, a couple. I know there's a couple. I know one. So keep writing your books. Keep doing what you're doing. That endless reading list, do you still have reading lists? Summer reading lists? Those reading lists will help you also. Anyway, the other thing that's important about going to Williams, I think, that prepares you for becoming a writer is not necessarily agreeing with everyone and everything. Sometimes the things that we remember most that we want to write about later are the people that perhaps we had an argument with, the teacher we didn't even like. Those are the things that stimulate our minds and make us just want to write stories later on. Sometimes the people that were your least best friends in high school might become your favorite characters. Now, every single one of you has a story inside you. Some of them are fiction, some of them are nonfiction. Most of you probably have family stories that have never been recorded. How many of you maybe don't even know who your great-great-grandparents are? Okay, right? So those are stories that you can investigate. Those are questions that you can ask your family. Where did your family come from? What country, what part of the world? How did they get here? Those are all wonderful stories that can start you writing. So Williams has given you everything that you need to become writers, to fulfill any dream that you have. And that means not just good writers, but great writers. And the only difference between a good writer and a great writer is very hard work. I didn't start writing novels till I was over 40 years old, and I didn't start writing young adult novels until I was in my 50s. And this summer, I have a young adult trilogy coming out. So it's never too late to keep pushing at what it is you're dreaming. And I think that because you're a Williams student, you can do just about anything. So thank you.
Our little bit of a latecomer, Dr. Julia Chase Brand, class of 1960, is a runner. We'll get to that in a minute. She currently resides in New London. Her great-grandfather and grandmother were leaders in the American suffrage movement. She was born in Groton, and her first inspiration to run came from Mr. John J. Kelly. Anybody recognize that name? They just dedicated an incredible statue to him in Mystic. Mr. Kelly was a Boston marathoner, a New York marathoner, quite an inspiration to many runners in this area, Dr. Brand being one of them. Dr. Brand studied zoology at Smith College. When she graduated, she immediately took a liking to bats, and later appeared on Nickelodeon as the Bat Lady. She was also, okay, I heard a gasp there. This is the Bat Lady. Dr. Brand was also instrumental in discovering that bats aren't really blind, they just have really bad eyesight. She also helped produce a study about how orangutans and gorillas unconsciously stick out their tongues in matters of social aversion, just as people do. At the age of 53 in 1996, she became the oldest person to obtain a degree in medicine at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine. She practiced child psychiatry and as of 2012 is medical director of outpatient psychiatry at Lawrence Memorial Hospital. She has contributed to and authored many articles and books. Dr. Brand.
Hey guys, can you hear me well? Yes. Okay. I'll try to keep this brief. Yes, you're very lucky to be here, and I know some days it doesn't feel like that at all. I'll tell you about it. Okay, I'm a paradox. I have a pair of doctorates, PhD and an MD, and what'll be on my obituary was when I was 18, 19, and I challenged the AAU ban on women running anything more than, initially it was 200 yards, and then it was 800 yards, by entering a road race with, Life magazine and World Press there, and we actually made the AAU back down and enjoyed cross country. That was my gift to you. I'm writing a story on the early history, which is actually kind of interesting because the whole ban on women's running was based on a deliberate media hoax. The pictures were photoshopped in 1928, and the text talks about 11 women falling on their faces on the cinders, and I've watched the Olympic Committee. Didn't happen. So there's lots to still discover. This is a brand new discovery. And for 30 years, the collapse of the women was the excuse for why everybody knows that your uterus drops out after 100 or 200 yards. So there's lots to still do. Just on a note about WMI, it was enormously important for me. First of all, I came here and I put my foot firmly in my mouth during the interview. Miss Page was the principal. She asked me, I was young and quaking and coming from the public school system, well, what are you reading these days? And thank God I was reading something substantive. I had just finished John F. Kennedy's Profiles in Courage, which I proudly told her, and I was reading Crime and Punishment, which to this day I haven't gotten through. But I was reading it, and I said to her, so Profiles in Courage and Crime and Punishment, and then the usual junk like detective stories. And she looked at me and she said, oh really? I write detective stories. So you can survive all kinds of terrible things. I came here as a scholarship student and received a first grade education. The English skills, you wouldn't think a scientist who goes off traipsing through Trinidad and Australia and around the world studying wild animals would say that about the most important skill, but the English skills were the most important part. We had to go right back to sentence writing and the math skills also. Do you guys know that in our era, only 50 years ago, when they reported SAT scores for the girls, they had a separate scale. Well, you got a such and such score, and for a girl, that's really pretty good, and they had a different percentile scale. Anyway, WMI didn't think that way, Williams, and so I got well-grounded in both of them. The next thing I wanted, and so I learned to work my bloody tail off here. I came from public school, I felt like I was a year behind in everything, and boy did I learn how to work academically, and that stood me in good stead all the way up through med school and all the rest. I'm going to tell you a slight bit of, I hope I don't embarrass you by telling you something a little bit personal. I know there are probably 20 people in this room who share some portion of this and probably, like me, keep it quite private. I came to Williams on scholarship because we had no money. We had a nice, prestigious name. My father was a Rhodes Scholar, my mother was a grand beauty. And as often happens, behind that reality was the dark side of having two parents who were quite alcoholic, falling drunk daily. The state coming in and having to help us out, and mental illness. And when I was here at Williams, already feeling like the country bumpkin who was a year behind, my father was taken off to Norwich State Hospital, the insane asylum. And in those days, even now, that was an enormous shame to bear. And quietly, this school, I don't quite know whether the state first alerted them or what, but the principal sort of took me aside and she said, you know, I know you're having to do a lot at home. I had to take care of the younger brothers and put the ill parents to bed, and I was often up all night. I know you have a lot to do at home. If you're ever tired, you can just go use the nursing station and take a nap. And sometimes I needed to. And then they found out that I had this secret passion for running. And again, the same principal who wrote detective stories said, you know, if you ever get feeling penned up in here and you have time between classes, just go out and run. And then she took me down and showed me the art room. You have no idea how the kindnesses that I received here, what reads on my official obituary, or I'm sorry, CV, looks very impressive with degrees and exciting things, and you know, I've done television series and all that. But the kindnesses and the education, and for those of you who are sharing some portion of my family history, a big hug, and find yourself an adult that you do dare talk to. Thank you.
Rachel Burrick, class of 1980. Rachel's work has been shown internationally, including exhibitions at venues such as the Serpentine Gallery in London, the 26th Biennale de Sao Paulo, Brazil, the 7th International Istanbul Biennale, and Musée, pardon my French here, and Musée d'Art Moderne de la Ville de Paris. Close? Okay. In the United States, she has exhibited at the Smithsonian American Art Museum, Mass MoCA, the Aldrich Museum of Contemporary Art, Ridgefield, Connecticut, and Sakima Jenkins and Company, New York, among others. She is, in addition, the recipient of numerous grants, including fellowships from the Joan Mitchell Foundation, Anonymous Was a Woman Foundation, the Ingram Merrill Foundation, and a Smithsonian Artists Research Fellowship. Rachel received her MFA from Yale University School of Art and BFA from Rhode Island School of Design. She was a member of the faculty in the Yale School of Art Sculpture Department from 1991 to 1999 and has taught at the Rhode Island School of Design since 1999, where she is presently professor and head of the Glass Department. Ms. Berwick.
Can you hear me okay? Yes? Yeah, okay. So that's my bio. And I was at Williams. I guess I graduated in '80, but I was only at Williams for 2 years. I came here as a junior, so kind of late in my high school career. But it was really 2 very valuable years for me. And the school was much smaller then, and the art program was 1 person, and but it was such a valuable time for me because I found that within this very supportive environment, a lot of things were connecting for me. I was interested in science. Really, I actually wasn't so interested in science. I was interested in nature, but I felt that science was the only way to get to nature. So I sort of had visions of going to school to study science, and thank God that didn't happen because I think I would have been a very bad scientist for a lot of reasons. But I guess within that time, those 2 years, working in art classes, I did the Project Oceanology program. Do you guys still have that? You do, right? Those were moments that stand out for me as being really formative in kind of significant ways. I kind of came around to the fact that I was going to pursue art, and so I went to RISD, Rhode Island School of Design, as an undergrad, and studied sculpture and then ultimately glass. But glass was of interest to me because it was taught as a fine art medium, not as a crafts-based medium, which was kind of significant for me for various reasons I won't go into now. Leaving RISD, actually while I was at RISD, I found out that there were some things in the collection of the RISD Museum, because RISD is an art school, but they also have a museum within the institution. And I found out there were things in that collection I wanted to spend time with. So I went to the museum and I offered up myself as an intern so I could spend time with those things in that collection. And so that turned into a job while I was a student there, which ultimately, when I left RISD, as a person with a BFA in fine arts, there aren't jobs out there for fine artists, at least there aren't signs for fine artists. So I had to find a way to support myself when I left RISD. And I ended up getting a job at the Commission on the Arts in Connecticut and working on their public art program. And it was the experience that I had at the RISD Museum that made me an attractive candidate to the Commission on the Arts. And so I spent about 5 years out of school, between undergrad and grad school, working in public arts administration and also building my studio practice. And it was kind of incubation time for me, where as an artist I was just kind of finding my way. I was showing in local galleries, making work really for myself, but looking for venues to show the work in. And as an artist, there isn't some easy roadmap as to what direction you're going to take or how this creative practice is going to turn into something that will be a profession for you. So I was just sort of had my foot in arts administration, making my own work, and that worked for a while. I ultimately moved to New York and continued in that way. And after about 5 years, I decided I wanted to make a deeper commitment to my studio practice to see where it could go. And that's when I went to Yale. And at that time, it was going to Yale at that time, studying art within a university, this liberal arts university. It was such a formative time. I could not have foreseen how valuable that time would be, where all of these other interests that I had, my interest in nature, science, process, material, all came together. And in a university setting, I could go over to the med school, over to the Peabody Museum, into the linguistics department, wherever I needed to in order to do some research to then make my work. The work that I make is I do large-scale installations. They're multimedia installations. I'll work for months, sometimes years, researching something. And that research is book research, it's material research, it's process research. And so research itself is something that, as an artist, I can divine as well for my practice. But and anyway, at Yale, that was the place where I really developed the studio practice that I still use today, where all of my work is research-based. I work with themes of extinction and loss, and I look to natural history and the history of science for stories that lend themselves to those themes. So, and at Yale, I discovered another thing, which is that I can teach, and I like teaching. So I was hired by Yale when I left Yale with my MFA to teach at Yale. It was supposed to be a temporary job, but it turned into a long-term, more full-time job. And I stayed there for about 9 years, teaching both grads and undergrads and making my work. And my studio practice just grew, and the venues that I showed in also grew, so that I was showing in commercial galleries, but I really don't make commercial work, so that was an interesting relationship. And then showing in these larger venues, which Jane had listed, with biennales where you can, that are international venues where you can make large-scale installations, and it's a pretty interesting life. I'm enjoying it quite a bit. After about 9 years of teaching at Yale, I then decided it was time to leave, and I went back to RISD. So I only teach where I went to school. Williams is next, maybe? No. And I, seems to be that way. But yeah, so and at RISD, it's been really interesting because RISD's an art school. And this idea of research and investigation is something that I use both in my practice but also in my teaching. So in the glass department, people think that it's just about glass blowing or craft, but actually the glass program is a place where all of the students in glass work extremely hard. We have this common interest in material and process as the kind of grounding for our studio practice or our creative practice. And then from where that goes, from that point, that kind of shared point, anybody knows. I really teach the students to test the limits of what's possible and not accept definitions that have been given to them about process, idea, art history, or what have you. So that's, oh, and I just want to bring that back to Williams, which is that there I was, you know, very interested in marine biology and oceanography, and having this facility in art. And it all kind of came together for me later on, but I would not have known that if I had at that time. I really kind of found myself following my instincts. And I teach a lot of, you know, young people certainly at the college level, and I do find that students tend to come to me thinking that they're supposed to know the answer about where something is going before they invest in it. And I would just say that you should resist that temptation. Follow your gut, do the things that really feel right to you, and it does make sense later on.
If you're interested, you can see Ms. Berwick's work at www.rachelberwick.com. It's really beautiful. I've been looking at it myself. Martha Connell, class of '93. Prior to joining International Union for the Conservation of Nature, Martha served as marine science faculty at the U.S. Coast Guard Academy. Martha was also a study director for the Ocean Studies Board and Polar Research Board at the National Academy of Science, and has served as a congressional fellow for Senator Lautenberg of New Jersey, focusing on ocean acidification legislation. She has spent time teaching on sailing school vessels at the Sea Education Association and participated in 2 field seasons in Antarctica for aerogeophysical research projects. Martha holds a BA in geology from Colgate University and an MS and a PhD from the University of South Carolina. Ms. McConnell.
Can everyone hear me okay? I am absolutely delighted to be here. I was giggling actually on my drive up here. Hopefully I was going to be on time too. But it is so fun for me to be back, fun for me to see the school, fun for me to see the transformations, fun for me to see some of the new class of 6th graders. I actually haven't been back to Williams in about 20 years. And the first person I see when I get out of my car is Mr. Kelly, which was awesome. The second person I see is Mrs. Martineau, even more awesome, and Mr. Emanuel and Mr. Knudsen. So it just brought back this sense of community that I remember from being here that you all are experiencing, which is just tremendous. I was a student that actually, I was afraid of our summer reading school. I was afraid of our English classes and our writing, but the writing skills here have definitely served me well in my career. But one thing I wasn't afraid of was the science classes. I loved them. I loved Project Oceanology. I loved physics class. I loved the chemistry class with Mrs. Samuels. And that's where I felt where my comfort zone was. And so I went to Colgate University, and I thought it was going to be a computer science major. I just fell into a geology class, really, just because a friend of mine was taking it, so I took it. It turns out that that also set me on a path of science. And following Colgate, I knew, though, that I wanted to pursue a career in the sciences, but I wasn't sure where I wanted to go. So I wasn't convinced directly to go straight to graduate school. And so I took off and went to Cape Cod and taught on sailing school vessels, taught oceanography, sailed the North Atlantic and down into the Caribbean, and for half the year I was doing that. The other half of the year I was a research assistant in Antarctica, where we're mapping the rock beneath the ice. There's about 4 kilometers of ice on top of that continent. And finally, when I went back to school, though, I wanted to merge those two topics, geology and oceanography. So I went back for the field of paleoceanography. So that is essentially looking at natural records in the past, marine sediments, ice cores, to try and determine what, taking a snapshot in time of what our oceans or our atmosphere might have looked like, 30,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago, and so on. But following getting my PhD, I didn't go the traditional academic route. Instead, I went to Washington, D.C. To work in Congress to merge the ideas of using science for decision making. Many of you in this room are going to be scientists. Many more may be government officials or policymakers, but all of you guys are stakeholders. And one of the most important elements of what I was trying to do was having a common ground on certain topics between those many different viewpoints. Having government officials talk to scientists and using science-based knowledge from our ocean and our climate system for responsible decisions. And from there, I took my work from domestic to international, and worked for a large conservation organization based in Glan, Switzerland. And it's the largest and oldest global conservation organization, and I manage the polar program. So where that lies is using our science to have the nations talk to each other. Many of you may actually be interested in international relations. Most of you may be going in a broad program, if not here at Williams, but maybe you traveled with your family, maybe you'll go to a broad program in college. But you already know that nations need to talk to each other about different places, and those two places that I care about a lot and I think about a lot is the Arctic and the Antarctic, and how to better manage those regions. But I think I wasn't sure what I was going to say today, except this overwhelming sense of community. In each one of those facets of my life, I've had communities evolve from them, and Williams was the start for me. And it was tremendous for me to walk through these doors and see these classrooms, and also see some former classmates that we haven't seen each other in so long. So I think that's one of the biggest messages that I took away from this place that I actually forgot about for quite some time until recently. So enjoy your time here. Thank you.
Lieutenant Commander Bennett Crispin, class of '97, was born and raised in Old Lyme. After graduating from the Williams School, he attended the United States Naval Academy. There he graduated with distinction in 2001 with a BS in electrical engineering. Lieutenant Commander Crispin was selected for the immediate graduate education program, where he received his master's degree in electrical engineering from Georgia Institute of Technology in 2003. Following 1 year of initial nuclear power training, Lieutenant Commander Crispin reported to the USS Springfield, stationed in Groton, Connecticut, where he served as the main propulsion assistant, chemistry and radiological controls assistant, and then assistant engineer. After 5 years of meritorious service on submarines around the world, as well as in work in Washington, D.C., Lieutenant Commander Chrisman then completed the Submarine Command course in September 2014 and is currently serving as Executive Officer, USS New Hampshire. Excuse me. Lieutenant Commander Chrisman is authorized to wear the Meritorious Service Medal, the Navy Commendation Medal, sorry, 3 awards, the Navy Achievement Medal, 2 awards, and various unit and campaign awards. He is married to the former Samara Golden, and they have 2 daughters, Charlotte 4 and Parker 2, both of which make their grandmother very happy.
Thank you very much. It's really good to be back here at Williams. I've been a part of this community since I was a little kid. My mother taught here for 25 years, and when I was sick, I used to hang out in the office with Miss Cardiff at the time, as my mother was teaching for the day. So I pretty much grew up in this school. My brother also went here. So I really do love this community, and it's really good to be back to talk to you guys about my career. As you probably are seeing, I'm a naval officer, which is a little bit unusual for a Williams School graduate. At the time that I graduated, I was, I think, only the 2nd person to ever attend a service academy. And so most people, if you talk to them while I was at Williams, would say that I was going to go off to MIT and become an engineer working at Apple or Google or something like that, which I don't even know if Google existed in 1997. But I spent most of my time here at Williams in the computer lab teaching others how to get their homework done or fixing some problem with the computer. So it wasn't really in my mind that I was going to be a naval officer until I started the U.S. First Robotics Competition, which is now called, I think, FIRST. And we did that over at the Coast Guard Academy. And there, I really got to see what it's like to be a cadet at one of the service academies, and that kind of piqued my interest in what it is we do with our military and Coast Guard service members. And the big thing that resonated was just the leadership aspect, the ability to lead people in a small, tight-knit unit. I really enjoyed that idea, and particularly with the Navy, which is very technical. I thought that would be a good merriment of my technical interests and leadership. So I didn't get a whole lot of support initially here at Williams. Everybody thought I was going to go do different things, but it is a good community that supported me in that effort. And I went off to the Naval Academy, and have since. My career is very sort of defined, right? I go through the initial pipeline training, get to a submarine, succeed there hopefully, and then move on to the next tour. So there have been challenges along the way, and I just wanted to talk to some of the things that I learned at Williams that I think will stand you guys in good stead if you take them on board. First off is I learned to be resilient at Williams. And I think resilience is a very important value. In the case of my career, I didn't even get into Williams by passing the entrance examination. But I ended up finishing at the top of my class, awarded the Marion Hamilton Bowl, I think it's called. Anyway, point being is, don't allow minor or even major mistakes to give you doubt that you can accomplish something, okay? Continue to recognize that you can succeed if you put enough effort in. That is being resilient. Don't let those setbacks actually set you back. The second thing I learned at Williams was initiative. When I went to Williams, we used to have assemblies where kids could get up and they could talk about their summer break and what they did, volunteering at a soup kitchen. And they could take that initiative, they could put themselves out there for others to hear what they did, taking risks and having the community accept them for that. So I recommend, as you go through your career and whatever it may be, learn to take initiative. okay? Learn to see a problem and correct it by yourself or with the help of others, but you honcho that. And then the third thing I learned at Williams that has definitely carried me in good stead is intellectual curiosity. So never stop wanting to learn and improving yourself. Here at Williams, I had some of the best teachers who constantly challenged me to learn more. Despite what grade I was getting in the class, that didn't matter. It was about learning. So I want you guys to think about that as you go on away from school. When you're done, when you're graduated from college or wherever it may be, you finally think you have achieved the pinnacle of your educational career. That's not it. There are still things to learn. I am learning things every day. So I'm not going to go a great deal into the naval service. This is not a recruiting ad. So, you know, if you have questions afterwards, I'd be more than happy to explain what it is I do. Just so you know, I am the Exos, I'm the second in command. That means that when the captain is asleep, I'm the captain of the ship. I run the ship on a day-to-day. I manage 135 people, and it's a challenge. It's a challenge to train a crew to get from a place of limited knowledge and proficiency all the way to deploying overseas and taking a very challenging and technologically sophisticated submarine and putting it in harm's way and everybody coming back safely. So that is my job, and I appreciate the opportunity to come talk to you all.
Dan, can you bring up channels 1, 2, and 3 a little bit, please? We have a few minutes for questions. So if you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand a little bit more, honey. Anybody have a question for anyone on our panel? No? Coach Smith.
I have a question that's actually for the whole panel. When you first went to college, did you feel like the Williams experience gave you an advantage over some of your peers that were in the same classes?
Who wants to take that?
I can speak to that. So I definitely felt that way, but I also think I went in a little bit arrogant about it. So I would say, you know, go in with an open mind and recognize that college is tough. There are things that you may not have learned here. And though you have become a very good writer through Williams, though you may have excelled in math and taken calculus when others have just taken algebra, it doesn't mean that you're going to be head and shoulders above them without recognizing first, assessing your own abilities. Don't go in there arrogant about it. That's what I would recommend.
Anyone else?
Another answer to that. None of us have finished products, even at 70 and 80. I went off to Smith, you know, going to be an English major because that's what women did. Excuse me, I apologize. And I stood in the corner and cried every day for my first year and was absolutely miserable. Took a wrong turn, walked into the zoology building, and saw all these gorilla skeletons, and suddenly realized, that's what I like, is animals. You'll have that experience. You'll probably have 2 or 3 different lives and worlds, and the trick is when you suddenly see something that you get, that works for you, go for it. Let the Williams School gave me the academic preparation, but I was immature when I walked in.
Any other quick question? Can we thank our guests one more time?